The Aces rolled, and they looked WNBA championship ready.
You got to figure this out, Connecticut, because you had your girl nervous.
The post is going to be a war.
Connecticut, y'all got to stop playing with my feelings like this. Stop putting yourselves with y'all backs against the wall for no reason. Take care of business.
Hey, basketball fans, welcome to a brand new episode of your favorite WNBA show, Around the Rim. And it is the playoff edition because we are in the middle of the playoffs right now. LaChina Robinson, joined by Terrika Foster-Brasby, as always. And Terrika, let's see, where do we start? The first round, we had 3 sweeps and 1 game 3, which was Connecticut, Minnesota. They went the length. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's just recap quickly the first round, starting with the number 1 overall seed in the Las Vegas Aces. They were dominant over the Chicago Sky, winning in 2 at home. Shout out to Chicago because, coaching change, injuries, all of that stuff. I thought Imre von Tonsever, I hope I'm saying his name right, the interim head coach did a fantastic job, but the Aces rolled and they looked WNBA championship ready. What stood out to you from that series?
A'ja Wilson just continuing to do what A'ja Wilson does. That 38-16 performance was like a statement to me. It kind of let people know, I don't know what you thought coming into this, but I'm ready and I stay ready, right? So I thought that was very impressive. And then just the way that Chelsea Gray continues to take ownership of this team from a guard perspective, she is the point guard for a reason. And
yes,
the respect that just needs to continually be put on her name is never ending. So I think to me, those are the 2 players and the 2 moments that really set the tone for this Aces team heading into this playoffs.
Yeah, you mentioned A'ja's 38-point performance. That was in game 2 of that series. And had she not got popped in the eye, she might have got 40. 16 rebounds to go along with that. And then you mentioned Chelsea Gray. That first game, she had 20 points and 7 assists. It's Diana, Chelsea, and Cynthia Cooper for the 3 players that have had the most 20 and 5 performances in the playoffs. So Chelsea got off to a fantastic start as well. Alysha Clark was named 6th player of the year. Any gripes with that, Terrika?
I don't have any gripes with it. No, I voted for DiJonai Carrington. I just thought that the way that she stepped up in terms of the absence of Brianna Jones, I mean, she was averaging over 8 points per game, over 2 rebounds per game. I just felt like those last couple of weeks that DiJonai was missing because of a foot injury may have been the reason why other people didn't vote for her, but it was honestly the reason why I did. I just noticed the difference in Connecticut and how they were able to perform without having that additional defense that she has coming off the bench, without her additional rebounding ability. So for me, I voted for DiJonai, but I can understand why Alysha Clark won that award. Totally deserving, totally respected.
Yeah, I also voted for DiJonai Carrington, but have no issue with Alysha Clark winning it. She was also very deserving. I thought both of them stepped into situations where there was an injury in the starting lineup. You know, Bree Jones going down, Candace Parker going down. So they both were prime and ready to go. So no issues there. So the Aces will play the Dallas Wings. So let's shift our conversation over to that series. The Atlanta Dream did not win a game against the Dallas Wings in now 5 tries with regular season and playoffs. Mm-hmm. The Wings just proved to be too much in their size and their ability to attack the glass. I thought game 1 of that series was phenomenal. We saw a historic performance by Ryan Howard, who set the record for points in a WNBA playoff debut with 36. She had 19 in the first quarter. But Atlanta was up 20 and they weren't able to regain that lead. And I kind of felt like that was emotionally draining for Atlanta. I believe if they were going to steal a game from Dallas, it needed to be that first game, because then Dallas was like, okay, we see what y'all coming with, and had time to prepare and make the proper adjustments. But T, how about that series for you?
See, I thought the opposite. I actually believed that the first series was going to be pretty much Dallas in a dominant fashion, and that Atlanta would be able to make adjustments and make it a tighter game in game two. But Ryan Howard came out the gate like, we're going to set the tone and set the tone early. And unfortunately, it's crazy to say a 36-point performance wasn't enough, but it just really wasn't enough. And I think that, you know, Dallas is doing something that other teams have struggled to do, and that's find balance. They are starting to allow all of their starters, players coming off the bench. People are scoring in double figures in these matchups. Like, they're starting to really figure out their balance. And unfortunately, they started to figure that out against Atlanta.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And I'm looking at the numbers from the final game. First of all, I should also say that in that first game where Ryan had 36, Satu had 32, was 11 for 20. And then Enrique was flirting with a triple double with 24 points, 7 assists, 9 rebounds. And I don't think we talked about that enough. But it just comes down to the size factor. They were plus 12 on the glass in that game. The Wings had 48 points in the paint in game one versus Atlanta's 24. And then, of course, they dominate as far as the second chance points with 16, 20 fast break points. Atlanta had issues in transition. But this final game the other day, I mean, I think Dallas was the first team in W history to have 7 players in double figures in a playoff game. I got to double check that, but I know there haven't been few if they were the only. If they weren't the only. The final score was 101-74. And you got to tip your hat to Atlanta for the season they had. I have no issues with Atlanta's season. When you look at this team on paper compared to other teams in the playoffs, they were lacking experience. This is a young organization. Tanisha Wright's in her second year as a head coach. They haven't been to the playoffs since 2018. You got to take steps. Yeah. To me, the gap right now is experience. Satu has played overseas for years, even though she hasn't been healthy here. Enrique Gumbawale has, played at the highest levels and has experience in the WNBA. Natasha Howard has 3 championships. Like, this is a team that, to me, and I'm using them as an example, and they are the next youngest team, either way, second and third. So both don't have the experience, but I just felt like Atlanta didn't have enough in a playoff game. Now they're like, okay, we get our feet wet. We see what it's like. They weren't in it last year, and this is going to help them build in the future.
I would agree with that. They're just bought in, and I love to see that. They're really just bought into what Tanisha Wright is selling, and you really can't help but think that players like Haley Jones, who didn't get an opportunity to play in the postseason this year, but that if she's improving over the offseason, she gets better. She helps to make this team better. I just really think that they're bought in, and it's really hard to really doubt a team and their ability when they're bought into whatever it is that their coach is trying to preach to them. And so I like this Atlanta team. I really love the hunger that I saw out of this Atlanta team all season. I can't wait to see more Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard playing together. So yeah, I mean, it sucked that one of these teams had to lose, and it sucks even more it had to be Atlanta, but I don't see this as a failed season, even in the slightest bit for Atlanta.
So on to Aces Wings, which tips off the semifinal series on Sunday in Vegas. The best of 5. It's a 2-2-1 format. So Vegas will get the first 2. I just saw it announced that Rick Ross is performing at halftime of the Vegas game on Sunday. I am sick. Right now. But when you look at these matchups between the two teams in the regular season, I thought they had met 4 times. They met 3 times, and it was 2-1. Is that what you had too? They met 3 times. At least that's what I had.
They met 4 times this season.
See, that's what I thought, but they printed 1 box. Anyway, the most important thing is that Dallas was able to win 1 game. Okay. You need that confidence against Vegas coming into the playoffs, because you need to have something in your mind that says, girl, we might be able to do this. Don't get it twisted. And quite honestly, I think, well, first, tell us about your poll, because you did a poll before we even get into this. So you asked the Twitter audience, which semifinal series they were most interested in. And once you talk about that, I will tell you what I have to say about this series.
52% were most excited for Liberty and Sun, and 48% were most excited for Aces and Wings. And I was actually shocked by that because I thought that more people would be interested in seeing the Aces and Wings.
So, no. The way I see this is more people should be interested in seeing the 2 seed versus the 3 seed because it seems like a more evenly matched matchup, right? The reason why people, I think, are more interested in Aces Wings than you may think is because I believe that people can see that this Wings team could possibly upset the Aces. Now, when I tell you so many things have to go right for this to happen, right? But their size really poses a problem, not just for Vegas, but for every team in the WNBA. They put 2 players on the floor that are 6'7", Kalani Brown and Tierra McCowan, okay? They have 2 really big wings that can play either any position on the floor in Satu Sabally and Natasha Howard. I mean, from point to 5, they could play every position, right? So you got two mini Candace Parkers on their team, right? And let's not forget Natasha Howard was also a Defensive Player of the Year. And a walk came off of the bench with her length and her size in game 2. I was impressed with the way she played. So when it comes to the physicality on the interior, they can absorb some fouls. Like they can really try to physical Asia Wilson, physical Kia Stokes, physical Alicia Clark when she's in there and just outsize and outplay Vegas in the paint. They're number 1 in points in the paint. They're number 1 in offensive rebound, second chance points. Like this is a team that can really get you on the glass. So in my opinion, the advantage has to be Aces at the guard spot. It has to be. And I've always felt like that about Vegas anyway. Chelsea, Kelsey, Jackie, that threesome, so important. And to me, Jackie is the most consistent, okay, like across the board. And in both Chelsea and, well, they have consistent stretches, but I think night in and night out what you're going to get from Jackie Young on both sides of the floor. I'm not talking about offense. I mean, Chelsea and Kelsey got to be locked in defensively. That to me is going to be the difference in this series is can they lock in those 2 in particular on the defensive end? Because the post is going to be a war, Terrika. How do you see this series?
Listen, so I agree with you, which is the reason why I was surprised that more people were not interested in seeing one for the basic matter of, New York had a 4-0 advantage on Connecticut in the regular season versus Dallas being able to take one. And we'll talk about that series in a second. But I look at it like this. When you mention guard play, there is I want to say it was the second or the first matchup in July. Even though the Aces did not, the Wings did not win that game, that was a winnable game. And the difference to me was Satu Sabally. In that matchup, both Chelsea Gray, Asia Wilson, Jackie Young, they all had 20 plus points in that matchup. So they were able to score. They were able to put the team on their back from an offensive perspective. The difference in that matchup was Satu Sabally only played in the first half and had 9 points. You had a 32-point performance from Natasha Howard. You had Krista Dangerfield was in double figures. I mean,
which game was this?
This was the matchup, and they had a back-to-back in July. And Dallas won the second matchup, but didn't win the first one.
I remember that.
They had three players score 20 plus points. You had a 32 from Natasha, you had 14 from Tierra, 12 from Enrique, but you only had 9 points from Satu, and that was because she didn't play in that second half because she sat out after halftime for an illness. And that game ended up being an 89-84 ball game. So you mean to tell me that you have 3 of your best players scoring 20 plus points and you still ended up narrowly taking this W by 5 points. That says to me, Satu Sabali is the X factor, and she has to be the person to continue to be the X factor moving forward. Now, the other two matchups were very dominant from as the game got towards the end in the favor of the Aces. And so it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. I agree with your point about the post is going to be solidified and closed. It's going to be the first time really that Asia is going to have to, well, this team is the only team that really presents players that matches up with Asia from a size perspective. But Satu got to go all out because she is the difference maker.
So in the first game that you just talked about with Satu, not playing very many minutes because she didn't play in the second half, Vegas had 2 bench points and Alicia Clark did not play. Okay.
Oh, Alicia Clark played in that game. She had 10 points in that game.
No, she did not. She started, not off the bench though. She was in the starting lineup. Yes. So, okay. Yeah. So sorry. So not off the bench. So they had 2 bench points. The next time that they played, when Dallas won, Becky went back to Alicia Clark coming off of the bench. I don't know why Alicia Clark started in that game. I'm looking at the lineup right now.
I don't know either because Candace was still
Kelsey
there.
Plum. Kelsey Plum did not play.
Oh, maybe
so
you're right.
The 3 that had the 20+ points were Chelsea, Asia, and Jackie. Kelsey did not play. Okay, so that game you don't even count in my mind. Now the game that Dallas won though, which was 2 days later when Satu was able to play.
Yep.
Clark was back to coming off the bench and they had 0 bench points. Dallas won by 2. Okay. And then you're right. The next 2 were different. You know what was different about the next 2? Alicia Clark came off the bench for 12 in one of those games, and she came off the bench for 11 in the other.
Mm-hmm.
The bench is going to really matter in this matchup. And 100%. And the fact that Kelsey did not play in that first game, I do think that's kind of a wrap. But the thing about a young team is that they haven't played since August 8th, and a young team is going to keep getting better, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like you put your kid up against the wall and you measure how tall they're getting every couple of weeks. Well, Dallas has had a lot more experience since then. So I can't wait to see how this plays out. I think that series is going to be a lot of fun. Right. We'll continue to talk about it and monitor it. And, of course, we'll have a show next week. But let's move over to the other series, T. You want to take us through what you saw. Let's start with New York and Washington.
Yes, New York and Washington. This was a series. This was a series that I said coming into this series that I thought was going to be probably the most intriguing, as I felt that Washington and New York matched up well against each other. They split the regular season series 2-2, each taking 1 game on each other's home floor. And yes, during that matchup, there were some injuries on both sides where there were players who missed or didn't play, but ultimately it came down to a overtime, last second, crazy end of regulation. But it came down to an overtime victory for New York in Brooklyn, in which they were able to take the series 2-1 and move on. 2-0, and able to sweep that series to move on to the semifinals. And I think coming into this, we had said for maybe the last 2 weeks that while Washington was a 7 seed, they really didn't feel like a 7 seed. It was injuries that had occurred for that team throughout the season that put them in position to drop further down in the rankings. But you have to think a healthy Washington team could have easily been a 4 or 5 seed versus a 7. Natasha Cloud had a 33-point performance. Tosh came into this game talking smack. She was like, I'm guarding Sabrina. She not going off today, which in fact she did. She guarded Sabrina. Sabrina ended the game with 11 points. And she was like, I'm putting the team on my back. I'm shutting it down. And she did. 33 points. she was nearing a triple double. She was flirting with a triple double in that game as well. I think that this Washington team left it all on the court. I felt like Natasha Cloud, who is entering next season as an unrestricted free agent. So there is no guarantee that she will even be in a Washington Mystics uniform, in which she expressed post-game in her conference, where she was very emotional, because she felt like this Washington team was a team that, you know, was one of the few teams that believed in her, that looked into her, that gave her confidence, where she built a family there. So I understand the emotional aspect of this for her. I understand how difficult it may have been for her. But I love the way that this team continued to fight. But the Liberty is just a team that spreads the ball so well. They had some miscues down the stretch, but a huge 19-point performance from Benijah Laney early on, 19 and 14 from Jonquel Jones, who was just so great for this team off the glass in game 2 of that series. It just really felt like at moments this was anyone's game, but ultimately the Liberty were just too much for Washington. And they capitalized on the miscues that Washington did in that series. And I mean, honestly, I feel like this might have been a different outcome, if not for the little things that happened in the last seconds of that game in regulation. It may have still gone to overtime, maybe not. But I enjoyed being on the edge of my seat for the entire thrill of game 2 in this matchup, LaChina.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to send a shout out to New York, because when I think about game 2, the Barclays Center was everything that you would want to see for a WNBA game. I used to call games at Madison Square Garden when the New York Liberty were there. I was devastated that MSG would have to go away, because you just can't replace the Mecca, right? Like, there's the WNBA, and I will die believing that the WNBA should play at MSG, right? However, Fabulous,
Lit.
Carmelo, Swiss Beats, Fat Joe, like the number of stars that were in the building, Sue Bird, like
Julius Randle.
It was wild to see like how many. When I saw Swiss Beats was up there, not only was Swiss Beats there, but Swiss posted the Liberty on his page. Like, it was so lit in there. And so like the environment was incredible. And I'm just excited for what's going to happen for New York fans around the WNBA moving forward, because, and shout out to Kia Clark and Shayna Stevenson, 2 Black women working behind the scenes of that Liberty organization, who do not get the credit they deserve for the branding. They've built, basically the 2 of them behind the scenes, I'll just be honest, as far as what we see from the outside, built the thing from scratch. So they're so deserving and need their flowers for everything that's happening over there. But Washington was upset-minded. And Washington was disappointed in the injuries this season. And Washington was also somewhat rested because of those injuries, but also they weren't a well-oiled machine. I don't think they had gotten enough reps down the stretch. Della Dawn, since returning, was only averaging 22 minutes a game. She played 35 and 38 minutes in those 2 games, something she had not done really, since she got hurt, which was earlier in the season. And I know she said she felt fine, but that's a stretch. That's a stretch. And so there were a lot of parts of the Mystics, I thought, offensively that just didn't go their way, but they were up for the challenge. If not for a historic 3-point performance from Sabrina Ionescu in game 1, she was, 7 3-pointers?
Yeah, she had 7 in game 1.
Yeah, so she had 7 3-pointers in game 1 and just went crazy, 7 for 13. And Stewie didn't have a great game. And then game 2, Stewie came out, played better, not typical Stewie, but she was a force. And in the first half, especially, to me, she was able to just wear down Washington enough so that in the second half, I just felt like they were making a lot of mental mistakes, even though they went into overtime. I thought there were just some mistakes down the stretch that cost them the game. But Cloud was a dog. Like, I can't say enough. I would want her in my foxhole. Today, she had that 33 points, 9 assists, Sabrina had 11 points.
Mm-hmm.
Cloud did everything she said she was going to do, but Jonquel is the unsung hero. Yeah, Jonquel is the unsung hero because she was making it physical. She was snagging boards. She hit the 2 free throws after Sabrina missed them. Benijah also kept things going. So I know that New York is like, woo, because Washington was that matchup that really was going to give them trouble in the first round. All right, moving over to the other side, Connecticut in Minnesota. Connecticut wins game 1 by 30. Minnesota comes back, gets big performances from Nafisa Collier and Kayla McBride, and they are off to the Target Center for game 3. And me, were concerned about Connecticut because I've watched the Minnesota Lynx win 4 championships in that building. I was there for all 4. And I can't tell you, actually their last championship, they actually might have played at the barn, which was even more crazy. But their crowd can give them an advantage, and you're playing against Cheryl Reeve, who is the all-time winningest playoff coach and has won 4 championships, made the adjustments for game 1 to game 2, no 30 points off turnovers, no 48 points from the 3-point line from Connecticut. They really had to earn it, but at the end of the day, in that game 3, it was DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas. Like, what you gonna do? What you see, T?
Listen, I want to point this out, right? Because this is what gets on my nerves with Connecticut. In 2022, they played Dallas in the first round, okay? They won game 1 by 25 points. They lost game 2 by 10, so they had to go to Dallas for game 3. And they won game 3 by 15. Fast forward to 2023. They're playing Minnesota. They win game 1 by 30, lose game 2 by 7, and then win game 3 by 15. Why does this Connecticut team seem to want to continue to put their backs against the wall in order to figure out they need to do what they need to do? This is the second time that has happened now. A dead clock is only going to be right twice a day. You got to figure this out, Connecticut, because you had your girl nervous. I believed you could pull it out, but Minnesota is capable. And what's the one thing that I've continued to say about this Minnesota team is that they have struggled with who is going to provide offensive production for this team all year. It's too spotty. I've been saying it all season. You can't have a game where you have Kayla McBride, who's capable of putting up 30 points, and then the next game she's completely silent. Now, credit to Connecticut's defense, because they're one of the best defensive teams in this league. So they're going to make adjustments. They're going to come out and play a bit more defensively sound. But all season long, regardless of the opponent, Minnesota has been capable of putting points up on the board, but too often it's only been left to 1 or 2 players to make that offensive production. And it's not like you are not going to win against good teams if that's the kind of basketball that you play inconsistently. So to me, that was the biggest thing. Like, if Nafisa is the only one that's going to give you 30 points, that's going to be a challenge playing against a good defensive team. And she did. Nafisa did drop 31. Like, she came out and did her thing. And I got to give her love, because sis had a whole baby last year. Like
a whole baby,
a whole child,
and she hurt her back. She hurt her back
in game 2, and still came back out and played, and was a difference maker to end game 2 against Connecticut. Like, she had to get back into shape. She had to really find herself early on. You know, Coach Cheryl Reeve kept saying, "I want Nafisa to understand that she is her. She needs to be aggressive. She needs to be more assertive. She needs to be more confident with taking that last shot, with being the go-to." And she did that. So, you know, credit to Nafisa. And it's very exciting for this Minnesota team moving forward to know that they have a player like her that they can build around. But Connecticut, y'all got to stop playing with my feelings like this. Stop putting yourselves with y'all backs against the wall for no reason. Take care of business. That's how I felt, LaChina.
I agree with you on Nafisa. I believe that she has really asserted herself and positioned herself, should I say, as one of the top players in this league. We knew it, but it was even more apparent with all the youth around her. I felt like this was a rough first playoffs for Diamond Miller. I think she'll bounce back next year, for sure. Kayla McBride did everything she could. I just didn't think they were still missing Lindsay Allen against a tough defense like Connecticut. You got to have your offense got to be able to do a multitude of things consistently. And,
They didn't have
again,
Shepard either, right?
Yep, Jessica Shepard, who is a facilitator at the 4 spot, but Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner are so tough to handle. And so that brings me to the matchup between New York and Connecticut. Jonquel Jones meets her old team. So that's kind of spicy. I like the point guard matchup with Alyssa Thomas and I say point guard, the two assist leaders, and Alyssa Thomas and Courtney Vandersloot. They both are, 1 and 2 in assists. But they do it in different ways. Sloot as a traditional point guard, Alyssa from, that point forward spot. And I'm interested to see how Connecticut responds to this challenge because they did not beat them all season long. They went 0 against them. And Terrika, I'm sure you were a part of some of those contests, so I'm gonna let you speak as to what you feel like needs to happen. But I know there was an overtime game on August 24th where the Sun had a 20-point lead. So at least they have something to draw on because the September 1st meeting, Stephanie didn't really play her starters that much, so that you can't really count that. And then the two matchups before that were May 27th and June 27th. We in a whole new season. So I look at that August 24th.
But you definitely need to look at that June 27th matchup, though.
But I mean, I feel like New York is a different team. Come on, June. This is
the reason why I say that isn't about New York. It's actually more about Connecticut because Connecticut's problem is that they don't close well against certain teams. And in that matchup, they also had a lead going into the fourth quarter and then didn't score for 4 minutes.
Well, they were also missing Bree Jones, who had just torn her Achilles 3 days before. I mean, she tore her Achilles June 24th, and then 3 days later, they played this game.
And they had a 21-point performance from DiJonai Carrington in that game.
That one, I kind of like when you lose a player like Bree Jones and you're playing 3 days later, like you probably gonna have some letdowns. You're still trying to find your offense.
I get it.
But August 24th, that final score 95-90. Again, Connecticut had a 20-point lead and they let New York come back in. And those kind of games can stick with you. And I think they're going to have to draw on some of that. Brianna Stewart had 24. Jonquel had 21 and 14. Sabrina had 18. Dewana had 30. Alyssa had 22. Tip Hayes had 13. I really believe that, and actually DiJonai Carrington did not play in that game. Neither did Olivia Nelson-Ododa, who has done some good things. But I really believe that Tip Hayes or Carrington or both have to step up their production on both sides of the floor. And the sad part is they're both hurt, right? They're both limping into the playoffs and are somewhat limited. But Ty Harris has been tremendous off of the bench. I think she will add yet another layer for them. But I do believe that when it comes to defending New York, that Hayes or DiJonai have to have an exceptional series.
I would agree with you 100%. You and I have both talked about how you're going to need some additional production from the guards of Connecticut, just in general to be successful. But just want to throw this out there. This has happened before in WNBA history where a team has faced a team in the semifinals that they lost to during the regular season. And that just so happens to be the Connecticut Sun. Last season, they went 0-4 against the Chicago Sky, and they ended up winning that series in 5 after having not, being able to find success against that team during the regular season. So I only say that to say that they have the confidence. Granted, it's not exactly the same Connecticut team, but I have to think that they will utilize all those kinds of little things to help mentally put them in the mind space that they have the ability to come out and go into New York and at least steal one while they're there. I mean, again, we just kind of went through some of their previous matchups, but Connecticut has to close. Number one, you can't let a 20-point lead just kind of dwindle away. There were various miscues at the end of that game, including a disrupted inbound pass that even forced overtime in the first place. So you have to be able to close in those moments. And then to your point, not having DiJonai Carrington in those last couple of weeks really played a role for Connecticut. Now you have her back. You have some presence that you can get from her. And I can't talk enough about how Ty Harris is just completely amazing. Like I asked her, sis, how do you stay ready? And she's, she continues to say, I stay in the gym. I stay working hard. I keep, putting those shots up because when your number's called, you got to be ready. So I love the fact that this team is really, they really have to position themselves and are experienced enough to position themselves mentally to go into the series thinking that they can win it all. But New York has just done some things well. Like they've really spread the floor well. They really passed the ball. I mean, you want to talk about assists. Yeah, they pass the ball so well in these random open lanes. I don't know where Courtney, I don't know how she be seeing them, but she does it all the time. And like, that's the difference for this team. Like they're such a good shooting team, and you can't, I feel like you can't leave too many lanes open for them because regardless, they have the ability to play big inside with Jonquel and Breanna Stewart, but then they also have the ability to shoot the lights out with Sabrina and Benijah. So you really have to pick your poison with this New York team if you're Connecticut. And I have to see big aggression from Olivia Nelson-Ododa. Her size is going to be critical going up against this New York team. So I don't know, man. A part of me feels like they can do it. The other part of me feels like this New York team is just getting better and better and better throughout this season, that they might be too good. I don't know. I can't pick right now, LaChina. Like I can't do it. I won't do it. We'll just have to see. I will be in Barclays on Tuesday. Last time I was in Barclays, LaChina, the fans treated me well, even though they didn't like my comments about New York early in the season. So I'm chilling. I'm not gonna be disrespectful. I don't want the fans to be mad at me. So here we are.
Well, here we are, T. That series will kick off Sunday at 1:00 p.m. on ESPN. Countdown at 12:30, leading up to so many storylines for us to be paying attention to. We hope that you guys will hit us on social at Around the Rim. Yes.
We have to announce that Satou Sabally has officially been announced as the most improved player.
Yes. Congratulations to Satou Sabally. She was my choice for most improved. I think she has even shown even more so in the playoffs why she deserved that. I forgot she had a triple-double and a 40-point game this year. Please. So yeah, hit us up at Around the Rim on Twitter or X or whatever. And I am at LaChina Robinson. Terrika is at Shino Sports. Until next week, y'all. Bye.